Hello, and welcome to In Balancing the Spectrum. I am your host, Jose. Now, before starting today's conversation, I would like to give you a little update about myself. The other day, well, it's been almost a week, I slipped on some ice, hurt my back and my neck. They were sprained for a while. I'm feeling a lot better now. Still a little sprained, but not as bad. So I'm doing good. Been doing some stretches and been moving around um the most that I can. But I'm good. And I would like to also ask you guys if you could like, comment, subscribe. That way it lets me know what conversations you guys like, and um, the comments could help improve that as well. So I could give you content that you can resonate with and be a part of. That being said, I was watching a show that touches on a lot of philosophical topics, and I may not be able to quote philosophers um, because the way my brain works is by micro learning. I learn a little bit about everything, and philosophy is a big part of my spirituality. And I don't go by what books say or anything like that, but like I said, I tend to micro learn and develop my own opinion, my own belief system. But in this show, they talked about a behavioral concept that is me versus us. So the me part is self preservation, and the S part is preservation, and contribution of a group that you are a part of, um, such as a community, a tribe, a clan, a colony, whatever you want to call it. For example, in primitive times, the hunter would gather resources by risking themselves to obtain these resources for the group that they belong to, the us. The hunter would be the me. And in this example, the me, the hunter, would per, per, excuse me, preserve themselves in order to obtain the goal, to achieve the goal of obtaining resources for the us, the tribe, the clan, the colony. This example can easily be seen as a selfless act, but the opposite could be true as well. The hunter, the me, could try to obtain their goal, obtain resources just to be part of the tribe, just so that they could have something to eat. Because in that tribe, you could also have people who are skilled crafters, and maybe the hunter is not. So, because the hunter is not a skilled crafter, cook, whatever the chore may be, they rely on the other people so that they could stay alive. And it's a type of codependence. But now, in modern times, throughout someone's environmental growth, they could learn the me versus us concept as they're growing up. But when someone feels ostracized, they tend to focus on the me part instead of the us part. So that means that they would be focusing on self preservation and not group preservation or contribution, meaning that their motivation might be corrupt. Because of this, they are always looking out for themselves, prioritizing themselves, and this could be due to a lot of things. And usually, like I said earlier, it is the root would be their environmental growth. If you grow up with shitty parents that neglected you and you had to fend for yourself and do everything on your own later in life, you adopt that trauma that you went through and you believe that you will always be on your own and you have to look out for yourself no matter what. And you start believing that you can never be part of a bigger community, that you can have people to depend on or have others depend on you. When someone might need something from you or ask something of you, you might just think, uh, fuck you. If I have to look out for myself and do everything on my own, then you can do the same thing. Don't come asking for anything of me because you're on your own, because I've been on my own. That mentality kind of takes over, and that becomes the me versus us. Sorry. But at the end, this is a choice that we make. No one is making this choice for us. No one is telling us to separate ourselves from society and having to be on our own. This is a choice that we make based on environmental growth. And then we have we versus them. Damn, I'm having a hard time speaking today. Uh, we versus them. We is a group or a community, and them would be groups we see as inferior or not equal to us. This is the reason why we have sexism, racism, misogyny, colorism, ableism, homophobia, ageism, xenophobia, all the forms of discrimination. And we are still trying to get past this point, this we versus them. We're still trying to get past that. We're learning as human beings. And in my opinion, the reason we can't get past we versus them is because we are focusing on we versus us. In this case, we would be large communities like religion, culture, ethnicity, nationality, orientation, gender, etc. And the us would be sub communities branched from those same communities. Because we divide ourselves, it leads to infighting, and this is the reason we can't get past we versus them. So, infighting happens in all communities. No matter what community you take part in, you can see that it always happens. Like, just for example, in the LGBTQ community, gay men and women can be transphobic, seeing them as unnatural. Same for being non binary and also bisexuality. It is still very stigmatized because people refuse to see it as a real orientation or feeling. Um, Also, spiritual communities tend to do the same thing as constructed religion by criticizing others or criticizing others' practices and belief systems while simultaneously acknowledging that everyone has a different journey in life. It can get very messy at times. Um, I say that our different belief systems are great because that is our individual connection with ourselves and it works for the individual person. So, why worry about what others do when it doesn't directly affect us? I think that it's because we choose to let it affect us. This is part of our free will. As you're growing up, you can be taught that certain things are wrong, morally corrupt, or sinful. But at the end, what is it that you think? I say don't worry about what your community will think or say about your individual beliefs and habits. Frankly, it is none of their goddamn business. When you free yourself from those anxieties, you feel more connected to yourself as a person and will be able to connect with all sorts of unique people and develop new experiences for yourself that you wouldn't have allowed yourself to experience before, enjoying your free will. Some people will say that determinism plays a role in our decisions, and to a point, it does. At the end, you're the one making a choice. So, determinism. Determinism is, in philosophy, that every choice you make is influenced by an exterior force or higher power. And to an extent, this could be true. But a lot of the times, we choose to blame circumstances, different situations for the decisions that we make. And this is normally because we can't recognize what made us make those decisions. Something I could share with you is something that happened a few years back, about um 5 years ago, something like that. About 5 years ago. So my dad had been having health issues, and he was prone to having TIAs, which is a medical term meaning mini strokes. So, in the past decade and a half, um, he had been having mini strokes on and off. The doctors said this wasn't normal because usually a person who has mini strokes ends up having difficulty with motor skills, speech, um, and different parts of the brain can be affected. Hold on. I'm gonna take a drink. Anyway, he had been struggling with his health for over a decade, and um, at the time, of course, I was worried and I cared for him, but maybe some things I didn't go about the right way regarding his health. I wanted him to eat healthier, so I would try to force him to eat healthier. And this caused problems, tension between us. And uh, regarding his past, uh, I felt like it was my responsibility to try and heal his traumas. So I tried to push him into healing. And when you try to do this, when you try to push someone into a healing process, it does not go well. You just build the tension, not just between you and the other person, but within the person themselves and within yourself. And the more you push, the worse it gets. So I was the type of person to get angry, and um yeah, I was quick to anger, being mad that he didn't want to take care of his health, and um that he didn't want to heal his traumas. He would go to other people that would tell him certain things that weren't necessarily true, but they led him to believe it was true. And he relied on those people more so than me. So I felt um, some sort of neglect, some sort of unworthiness, and it affected me so much that I just wanted to force him to fix all those issues so that potentially it could fix the issues that me and him had. Um, so really, I was doing it out of self preservation because by healing him, not just his health, but his trauma, I would I had the hope that it would heal things between me and him. So I was doing it for selfish reasons and I didn't realize it then. I do now. And the problems continued. And like I said, the tension, if you try to force someone into a healing process, the tension builds not just between you two, but within the other person and yourself. And at the time, my anxiety was getting real bad, and I was developing really bad panic attacks that I felt the need to hide them because I didn't want him seeing me that way or anybody else. The only one that could help me through my panic attacks was my brother, and I would call him up when I would have one. And, well, one day he ends up in the hospital. It was another TIA, but this time it was bad. Um, they said he had an aneurysm, and um, when I was in the hospital, I tried to be at his side the most that I could, but because I also had to take care of my own health, I had to come back home, rest up. Otherwise, I would potentially have a seizure. In the past, when he had been in the hospital, I would not leave his side and I wouldn't be able to rest, to sleep, and I would land in the hospital because it would trigger a seizure. So, uh, this last time I tried to take care of my health so I could continue taking care of him. But I remember being at home and he needed a favor. And I asked him what it was. And he told me that I had to pick up something from a friend's and bring it to him. But the thing is, I don't drive. And I'm really bad at directions because I don't drive. I don't really know the streets of my own town. Like if you tell me Washington Street, uh, I'll know what cardinal direction it's at. Um, but I won't know what area or specific area you might be trying to tell me. So the problem was not the favor. I would have figured out somehow um, to get there. But the problem was that when I asked him for the address, he was saying, you go down this street, you go, you turn on this street, you go this way, that way, whatever. Now, I was like, Dad, I don't know where to go. Could you just send me the address? And he told me he jumped to anger and he said things, and he's not a bad person. I know he cares for me. I know he loves me, but sometimes certain reactions um are a bit too much for me. He was very aggressive with his words, basically saying I never do anything for him and that I've never wanted to do anything for him, care for him, but he used words that really hurt, and it made me feel like shit. So I hung up and I start having this anxiety attack, and uh, my aunt, who is with us always and has been a great support for the both of us. Um, she was telling me, well, I have to go pick him up anyway, so we can go get whatever it is that he needs from his friend. And um, he didn't want to. He at that point he was saying that I well, he still says this, and I don't remember telling him this, but he says that I said, um, you're better off dead. What I remember saying is, um, and mind you, this was during an anxiety attack, and um, out of anger and anxiety, feeling unworthy, feeling like I haven't done much for him, that anger turned into what I remember saying, go to hell. You could just go to hell. And I yelled it at him through the phone. So when my aunt went to pick him up at the hospital, um, I was going into a panic attack because all these different scenarios were running through my head of what would have happened when he got home. What was going to happen? I knew he was going to be pissed off, and I knew he was going to continue um, making me feel bad about not being able to pick up whatever he needed from his friend. And uh, this panic attack was about to turn into a manic panic attack. And at that point, I was in a dark place, and I called a friend. This friend never answered, and she was my friend at the time, but I called her for that reason because she never answered. And surprisingly, she did answer. And I told her what was going on and that I couldn't be here anymore in this environment because I had been worrying about the well being of everybody else but me. This was the first time that I said, I need to take care of me, and in order to do that, I have to leave. That was my choice. I could have chosen to stay and suffered in silence, but in that moment, I knew that my mental health needed nourishment, and I wasn't giving it to myself because it was just a constant argument with my dad. And, well, my friend came for me, and I still, even though I left, I still checked up on him. I would call him, ask him how he was. Uh, he was angry. He didn't really want to talk to me for a long time. My brother actually called me up the day or the night I left, and he basically said that how could I abandon him? How could I abandon our dad? And I told him I didn't abandon him. I still care for him. I want to be there, but I can't because my mental health is not well. And eventually, I moved from my friend's house to another friend because that whole situation at my friend's house was getting a bit intense. There was a lot of issues between them, but during the time that I was with them, which was like a month and a half, I did do a lot of self reflecting and it helped to a point. But my other friend said, come over here. Doesn't sound like that's a healthy environment. So you could stay with me. And that friend, he helped me with my medication. He paid for my medication. He not only opened up his doors to me, but he helped me with things he didn't have the responsibility to do. So I'm very grateful for him. And during the time that I was with him for almost almost a year. So from 2020 to 2021. Um, but during that year, there was so much introspection, looking within, and just learning about myself and learning how certain actions that I had with my dad weren't the right ones. I kept in touch with my dad, and eventually he came around, and uh, I would visit him. Would come over on special occasions to my friend's house, and I think that was the healthiest relationship that I had with my dad. I actually felt close to him during that time. So in 2021, my dad calls me and tells me that the aneurysm or the treatment for the aneurysm was not working, and that doctors had told him he only had 3 months to live. He denies this now. He denies having told me that he had 3 months to live. But I remember this conversation because it was a big deal for me. Um in my mind I said he has 3 months to live, but it's okay. I can still care for him and be there for him when he needs me, like I have been doing for the past year. But my friend spoke to me and he convinced me to come back with my dad. He's the one that said he needs you, and if you don't go back, you're gonna end up regretting not going back. And he said, think about it and tell me what you decide. Um, so I did think about it, and in that moment when I was thinking about it, I was looking back at the past year and how healthy my relationship with my dad seemed, how it gotten better. There wasn't any turmoil at all. And I also look back at the time when I was here before coming back. And that's when I realized that I was crossing many lines when it had to do with his health. And I wanted to force him to make healthy decisions. Um, yes, I did it out of love and caring for him, but it was wrong for me to do so because that's not what he saw as healthy for him. So I realized that I had to respect his perspective, I had to respect his decisions. If he wants to eat unhealthy, okay, that's fine. I can't do anything about that. If he wants to change his habits, he's the one that has to do it. I can't force him to do it. And I learned that when it comes to the arguments I had with my dad, they were mostly based on health, food, eating healthy, and pushing him to heal. So when I came back with a mentality of I'm going to respect his choices, I'm going to respect his decisions, and everything went well for a while. Um, I would ask him if he had any news from the doctors, and he said no. He was just waiting. The 3 months passed, and he's still alive, and I'm glad he is. But I just feel like he lied to me. Every time I wanted to go to the clinic with him, go to the doctors with him, he would tell me no. And since I came back with the mentality, respect his decisions, respect his perspective, I just went with it. No questions. No questions asked. And now he says he never told me that. And I do feel kind of manipulated. The whole point of this story is that in those dark times, I had a moment of reflection, and I came back because my dad needed me. Maybe telling me he had 3 months left was his way of saying, I miss you and I want you to come home. He's not the most affectionate with his words, so I get it, but I wish that he hadn't used that technique. He could have done or said something else. And, well, years passed, and it was okay for a while. There was 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, 2 years ago. There was this big argument we had, and I'm not gonna go into the details about that because it has to do with his personal life. But basically, it affected the whole household and even people who weren't in the household. And he blamed it on me, but all I could say is he kept a secret when I had advised him to just let that secret out because it is his life and it is his choices, and whether people are okay with it or not, at the end, it's his life, period. So, again, point of the story. I could have decided not to come back, and this whole turmoil that happened years after coming back, could have been avoided if I didn't come back. I could have chosen not to come back. But the fact is that I chose to come back because I care for him and love him. And I wanted to be there for him. Whereas this is going back to determinism. Determinism did play a small factor. I was put in a situation by an external force, in this case, my dad telling me I got 3 months to live, which put me in a position of self reflection and having to make a choice whether to come back or not. So, yes, there was an external force, but the position that I was put in, the choice I made was because I felt it was the right thing to do to come back. I could have said, no, I'm not going back, but I'll be um I'll be there for you when you need me, and I could have just done that. But I know that I wouldn't have felt good about it, and it would have made me feel um guilty if something would have happened to my dad. I'm glad it didn't, but I know that I would have felt that way if I hadn't come back. So we always have a choice. There's always a choice. People who blame their circumstances or external forces for their situations, for the decisions that they make. Um, when we as people blame external forces for the decisions that we make, uh, we lack accountability in those moments. We have to take accountability for our actions. We have to take accountability for how it affects other people. Though sometimes our decisions do have unintended consequences, such as, stupid example here. Um, well, actually, no, I'm not gonna give you a stupid example. Well, I might as well, but I'll give you a serious example afterwards. Uh, Maybe I'm hungry and I decide to make myself a sandwich. I eat the last um, slices of bread, and suddenly someone in the household wants a sandwich. There's no more bread, and maybe they get upset, they get angry, they get kind of like bummed, like shit, damn, I really wanted a sandwich. Those are unintended consequences for from decisions that we make. Now, a serious example, that turmoil that happened after I came back to live with my dad. So, as I said, it had to do with a secret. Once that secret came out into the light, like I told him it would, um, there was a lot of chaos going around. because it affected other people and how uh, they were processing their emotions. So once the secret was out, I thought it was okay to be honest about everything because I didn't like the fact that I had to hold a secret and much less lie. And when I was holding the secret, I made sure that I would answer every question as honestly as possible. And well, um, while yes, I was honest, I knew that this secret affected other people, emotionally speaking. And I did tell him many times that it was better to just come out with it, but he always said later, it's not time yet. I haven't found the right words, etc., etc. But once it was out, I said, okay, finally, it's a weight off my chest, and I can finally answer everything completely honestly. Not just truthfully, but honestly. So I answered questions that people had, and my dad got mad. He was pissed off. So because I decided that I could finally tell the honest truth, um, not only was my dad mad, which was an unintended consequence from my actions, but the people that were asking questions were upset, and it was an unintended consequence of my part, but I was expecting them to be upset, but I wasn't expecting my dad to be upset because he had finally told the truth. So he was mad, and a lot of stuff happened. And anyway, I take accountability, or I took accountability for yes, I did tell the truth. Um, your secret was finally out, and I thought it was the right thing to do. So, therefore, I told the truth, and I don't regret it. Even if you are mad, I don't regret telling the truth. That's what accountability is. You know that it affected other people, and you validate their feelings. I get it. You're angry, or you're sad, you're upset, whatever. You validate their feelings, and you stay by what you decide to do or say. That's accountability. Responsibility is just being responsible for something that is your duty. For example, you are responsible for getting out of bed every day. You are responsible for brushing your teeth. You are responsible for your hygiene. You are responsible to feed yourself. That's responsibility. You're responsible to do your chores, to work. Those are responsibilities. And maybe for the most part, as kids, they try to teach us responsibility, which may or may not work, but I haven't seen or heard of people teach accountability, or at least teach the difference between accountability and responsibility. They make it sound like it's the same thing. But anyway, I digress. Um, when it comes to determinism, it is very much a a choice that you make, no matter what the outside force is. And when you do make that choice, take again accountability for it. Um, if you don't, well, then you're denying yourself that the decision you made was the right one for you or not, even if it affected other people, whether in a positive way or a negative way. So, my whole thing today was to talk about that we always have a choice, whether it's me versus us, we versus them, or we versus us. We all make a choice to separate ourselves um, from others. That's something that is taught to us, but, or at least in some cases, it may be taught. In other cases, it might just be expected. And the way that it's expected, at least the way that I'm thinking, is that your community, um, certain things are seen as normal and others are not. So it is expected of you, since you take part of that community, to think and behave like they do. But you have a choice. You always do. That's why I asked earlier, um, at the end, what is it that you think? What's your opinion? What's your belief? You have to create your own belief system. Otherwise, you won't feel like you have free will. Free will is basically just that. Um, it is based on our belief systems, our moral principles. It's based on what we feel. That's what free will is based on. And when you act upon it, it's probably the best thing you could do for yourself. And when it comes to different communities, I know we talked about me versus us, we versus them, we versus us. When it comes to other communities, specifically we versus them and we versus us, uh, we choose to see other people or other groups as inferior to us or unequal to us, and this becomes discrimination. And like I said earlier, it's because we have sub communities that branch from those communities that we make a part of or take a part of. Excuse me. But yes, it's the sub communities that divide and separate each other from one bigger community. The biggest community that we have is human beings. Human beings and nature. We're all organisms. And we choose to classify human beings as top of the food chain and everything else, whether plant or animal or bacteria, germs, we choose to make them seem inferior to us when in all actual in all actuality it's not that they're inferior, they just work differently than us, and that's okay. And that's the whole thing with human beings. You have different people from different cultures, religions, nationalities, and the more you divide those subcultures or subcommunities, the more smaller communities you have, and that's the reason we can't get past we versus them. Once we get past we versus us, we will be able to get past we versus them. And this is because as human beings, we would finally be able to achieve um, true empathy and solidarity for one another. And maybe we'll focus on human beings first and then the rest of the planet because we all live in the same planet. So that's something to think about. Maybe long winded and unnecessarily repetitive, but it's definitely something to think about. And if you have any thoughts, opinions, comments, feel free to send me a message through my Instagram, which is inbalancingthespectrum.pod, or my email inbalancingthespectrum.podcast@gmail.com. You could send me your thoughts, your opinions, your comments. You can try to fight with me, argue with me. Doesn't matter. Um, just send. And oh, also comments are enabled on the podcast itself, so you could comment as well. But for now, I believe it's time to go, to let you go. And remember that we are all living in a spectrum. Thanks for joining me. Until next time.